show where you don't know if it's part of the show. Welcome to the show. If you don't know, it's part of the show. Didn't they teach you to reach for the stars while opening up the bars and keeping you chained down with mortgage bills and cars? Vaccines for your arms, kids sounding like supercharged, caffeinated hate-filled scars and rage-quit repertoires. No answers for yards, caught up in emotion that's not even yours. Imposter truths like impeccable retards, lined up for your serving of Gish Galloping wars. No remedy can save the lost, in love with the yarn. I'm tired of walking into refracted shards, poor science displayed by disgusting bards. Soaked in sin with your dupe is delight in a new hand of cards. Been so long, seems like for love I'm just too hard, I'm just too hard, I said. Welcome to the show where you don't know if it's part of the show. Welcome to the show. If you don't know, you don't know. Intoxicated 8 makes you believe you're spinning in space while you have no shame or grace. It's a disdainful state I used to contemplate, how to save myself from my own self-hate. Wonder why I was even made with a dreadful fate, forced to try and awake with a full plate. No one to help me stay awake or educate. I've had to liberate and fight through hidden gates. But my brother, heaven could never be late, and rockets don't work in space. It's all fake, the show is on Mars. It's a joke, but you're too far gone, it won't be long. Fepe's beak is strong. We have our song and we march along like streams of knowledge leading to God's holy pond, and lives of truth that hits the bong and sings the song, turns mankind from the wrong. We come in peace with a holy gown and all of us wearing our holy crowns. So the earth is flat and we probably just won't get along, just to go along. I said, welcome to the show where you don't know if it's part of the show. Welcome to the show. If you don't know, you don't know.
Before we get into our regular scheduled program, I'm going to run a clip from one of my favorite shows. I hope it becomes one of yours. You can find a link to it in the description box below. This is IronWorx.
Good morning, GFR. Good morning, Truth Frequency Radio. You are listening to the IronWorx. My name is Josh Corey. I am joined this morning by my good friend and my co-host, one Mr. Walter Johnson. Walt, how you doing this morning?
Good morning, or should I say, oi, oi, oi. If that music didn't get you ready for a day, I don't know what will. Josh, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm better than I deserve, Walt. Better than I deserve. I am really looking forward to this morning's episode. I think it's going to be good.
We're excited. We have an amazing guest, Martin Lindgren, sir, flat earth British, mud, flood, historian extraordinaire. I'll stop blowing smoke, sir. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the IronWorx. We're so glad to have you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Walt, Josh, Adam. Good morning. Many blessings to you. That was epic.
Welcome you don't know if it's part of the show.
Welcome to Red Hen Radio, where truth fears no investigation. What do you know? What do you believe? Who are you? Where did you come from? Where are you going? How will you determine the way? What you think is news for you is only and absolutely propaganda. It's spin. There is no news for you. Only misdirection and disinformation. Join us here at Red Hen Radio as we discover how to squint when what we see isn't what ought to be. Because truth is not counterintuitive. Reading between the lines of the story you were just fed. I'm your host, Travis Finley. Welcome to the show. Do you know that you're part of the show?
Well, you don't know if it's part of the show.
Welcome back to another exciting adventure of Red Hen Radio. I'm your host, Travis Finley. Today's guest, it's, first of all, January 1st, 2019. So there you go. I'm not going to say Happy New Year because it's not the new year. It's the middle of winter. The new year comes at the end of March, the beginning of April, after the spring equinox. Just where I'm at right now, okay? My guest today is Jason Lindgren, who has his own internet talk show with a variety of guests that he hosts on his Secrets of Saturn, which you can find on SoundCloud, as well as Facebook. You can find links for his show below in the show notes, as well as a link for Crow 777 Radio, which Jason co-hosts with Crow 777. If you have not yet subscribed to Red Hen Radio, please do so, as well as hitting that bell notification so that you can keep up to date with Red Hen Radio. Sit back, relax, and enjoy Jason Lindgren.
Tagline or the byline on Crow Radio is "Belief is the enemy of knowing." Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very straightforward statement that I really like. When you believe something, it just means you're putting faith into a concept. Knowing something means that there's facts to back up what it is that you're accepting. And that's pretty much it. If you're going to believe in something, belief is kind of like almost like a religion thing where you're putting faith in something that you absolutely cannot prove to anyone, even if your life depended on it. So if you're going to believe something, that's great, but if you don't have any factual evidence, there's really not much you can do about it to validate whatever the concept you're referring to is. Knowing something means that you know that there is hardcore evidence. There's something demonstrating to you that this whatever is real.
So I had an interesting conversation. One of the things that happens after Nathan Oakley 1980's Flat Earth debate is once the show is over, the Google Hangout continues. And the other day I was lingering around and a couple of guys were talking and they started talking about their views on the corruption of the Bible and the distortion of its message. And somebody said something like, Christians' faith or Christians' belief in the Bible is not substantiated by evidence. It doesn't have any facts to back it up. And I normally don't challenge, not because I'm afraid, but just because I don't really think that it is either going to be productive or it's not going to accomplish anything. I guess I decided to speak up and I said, I'd like to challenge. Now, while I agree with what you just said in terms of belief is the enemy of knowing, I understand what you're saying and I agree with the way that you described it, but I think that what I'd like to say in terms of the conversation I had the other day with these other guys was Christianity is a faith that has to be based upon textual evidence. So, of course, we're not going to have events that we can point to and say, this is why I believe this. I have this fact. But as a Christian and someone who is trained in my master's with biblical interpretation, belief in a biblical sense is actually something that is established by content or evidence or fact. It's just that those facts have to be historical and either word of mouth or written down. Now, we can argue all we want about alternate narratives and alternate history, and that's a whole other discussion which I'm fascinated by. And as I mentioned before, your contribution in Crows has actually challenged me to take a few steps back and look at my tradition as a Christian. And I think that I'm in a place in my life where I can do that and be comfortable with it. 15 years ago, no way. I would have shut you guys down, just turned you guys off. Absolutely not. But all that to say, if you consider, or if you ever have a conversation with a Christian, I don't want you to think that their belief is not, is something that's not based on content or fact. It just has to be something that's not empirical. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I know where you're coming from. Christians, even the most well-meaning Christians, are what you would call faith by the book. And it's not just Christianity. Of course, there's Islam and multiple religions. I have a good friend who you may be familiar with, Wayne McCroy, who's the most in-depth researcher I know, and I respect him so highly. And the one difference between he and I is that he is a firm believer in Christianity and I'm not. And I don't argue it with him, but what the Bible says is what works for him, the concept of Jesus Christ and all that. And for me, that doesn't work, just knowing what I know about the skewing of history and all that. And the way I look at it is this. If a human being were out in the wild, for instance, let's say let's do a Jungle Book type scenario where a baby was left out in nature, survived for years and grew to adulthood. There's no evidence that any religion in nature could be impressed upon that individual to prove that a religion was correct or not. Because there was no book being impressed upon this person to give that person a validity of, oh, this says what reality is. But what that person does have is what they would have witnessed in nature growing up. So the sky clock is what they would have seen.
Yeah.
Mountains, if there are, the trees, how the cycles of Mother Nature work, all of that would have been the reality. But there would have been no discussion of Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad or anything like that.
Yeah.
Nothing. There would have been no inkling whatsoever to prove to that individual that there is anything beyond what that individual would have seen in nature. And that's where the whole nature does not lie comes into, because that is what you see. And I think a lot of flat earthers would probably be like, I think he's right, because they're doing the same thing. They're only going by what they are perceiving as opposed to what other people are telling them that they call indoctrination. For instance, what NASA tells you.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and I want to echo that as well. One of the things that is an aspect of education from a ministerial or a Masters of Divinity or anything, if you're going to go along those lines. One of the things that we talk about is called systematic theology, so that we systematize and categorize the epistemological issues that are either philosophical, metaphysical, or textual regarding the Bible. So one of the things that is an underlying presupposition or an underlying paradigm is that the Bible is a written revelation where God reveals himself and people record those revelations so that posterity has a record, right? The other aspect is creation. So we also would say that nature or creation is also a demonstrable revelation of the person and character of God. And one of the things that I thought about in my education is that the issue with revelation, whether it's written or whether it's natural, the issue is not in the medium. The issue is in the interpreter. So there is no lie in nature, right? the underlying presupposition from a Christian perspective, if you're a fundamentalist, and just take it for what it is. We don't need to go down this trail. But the underlying presupposition for a Christian is that the Bible is without error as well, right? So just as nature tells the truth, so does the Bible. So the question becomes, well, why do different people have different opinions on the Bible? It's because of the interpreter. It's not the source. It's not the medium. So that if we look at nature, you and I can have two different interpretations of an eclipse or the lunar wave or, whatever else it might be. But, I appreciate that. When you went back, to the lie in nature, that was a point that I was going to bring up later on, but, it's a good point. I appreciate that. So one of the other things that, is said on the show is we have to look to see if there is a there. So what does "is there a there" mean?
Well, I think that's just Crow's cute little way of saying, is there something to whatever it is we're looking into? It's a phrasing that he uses that's, I've never heard it from anyone else. It's unique to him. So I think that's just his cute little way of doing it. Is there a there? For, someone looks into the JFK assassination and it looks like there was more than one shooter. Is there a there? Probably a bad example because Crow doesn't get into that, but that kind of thing. The lunar wave, let's use that as an example. Is there a there? You'll have people dismissing it as, oh, that's just an airplane that went by. But so many people have captured it now multiple times, different equipment, different times, in different places, and they're quite confident, at least most of the time, that no, I didn't see a jet go by to cause anything. Plus, we've seen that on camera anyway, and we know what that looks like versus what a lunar wave looks like. So is there a there? Yes, there's something there that we don't understand that is different from typical nature. The normal nature would be a jet went by and made some wash over the image you were taking of the moon. But wait a second, there wasn't one, and we know what that looks like, and this looks different. So there is a there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've had that same experience with my own podcast where I've done biblical interpretation, and I have placed myself outside of the orthodox or the safety zone in my tradition. I have questioned the teaching of my tradition, and I've had conversations with people where I try to bring up something to elicit their ability to think differently about a certain passage or a certain teaching. And I've found myself wrestling through that because it's either you're fabricating or you're manufacturing something that isn't real. So if I'm having a conversation with someone and I would say, have you ever thought about this? Their question to me would be, because they're Christians, where does the Bible say that? Right? So what's your authority? And so the question becomes in my mind, and I didn't put it this way, but Crow says it. I felt like there was a there. Why am I asking this question? Why am I doubting the consensus? The reason is because there's something there. And for the past 15 plus years, I've been working through that issue because I believe there is a there. There is something in our tradition that we have not been paying attention to. And we've been going down this road, and I want to get us back to the fork so that we can take the other road. And talking to people who are going down the one road, they're like, why are we going to turn around? How far away is this? How long is it going to take? I'm not going back there. So it's been very interesting. And it's funny because before I came across Crow, I coined my own there, and the way I said it was this. Reasonable doubt is the mother of conspiracy. If there is no...
It's basically saying the same thing.
I'm sorry?
It's basically saying the same thing.
Right. So when Crow said what he said, I'm like, hey, that's me. So I felt some companionship there. But it's really, really interesting. Okay, so we brought this up, but let's bring it back and maybe see if we can flesh it out a little bit more. I'm going to repeat myself simply because I've got this question here in front of me. Okay, so we talked about there is no lie in nature, even though you touched on it. Pretend that you didn't. What does that mean? There is no lie in nature.
Well, nature just means that is the physical reality around you that you can perceive and will always be consistent. The moon rising and setting, the sun rising and setting, the sky clock being in the procession that it is. There's no lie there because those things are consistent day after day after day. That's what you see. You plant the seed and you water it and take care of it and make sure the weather is appropriate and all that, and it will grow. The trees will grow. Nature will grow. The rain will fall. All these things, that is nature. There's no lie in nature. So when you look at things that are natural concepts, these cycles that we know year after year after year, whatever year truly is, they're going to be consistent. And that is the one reality you can accept because it's right there. You are perceiving it. It's tangible. It's always going to be there. So that's the way I approach there is no lie in nature. The lies start coming in when other men and women start trying to impress their concepts upon you, a lot of times without any sort of validation to back it up.
Yeah, so let's go back to what I said earlier and bring it to where you are right here. So we're observing, let's say, the precession of the zodiac. Okay, so it's there. What's your interpretation? How do you go about processing why it's there or what it's there for?
That's why I like the concept of the sky clock. We know it's there, but we can't go and touch the stars. We can try our best to analyze it, and there's a lot of people who have certainly done camera work to try and figure out what the stars or what the true nature of space really is. But we don't know. But what we do know is these things are consistent, and you can follow that, and it will always be the same. It will be accurate. You can use that. I love the term sky clock. I love that concept because that is one of the true consistencies in nature. There is no lies in the sky clock.
All right, so I'm going to pick up on that a little bit. So why use the term sky clock? So you say what you just said. I'll edit this part out because I'm stumbling through it right now. But basically, you said, I like the idea of sky clock. Okay, so stop right there. And my question to you is, why are you saying sky clock? What do you mean? Sky clock?
Okay, so what's a clock? A clock tells time, right?
Right.
But clocks, true clocks, physical clocks are man-made and therefore are based off of a man-made concept. And as anyone knows, anything man-made to deal with time is really an approximation. Anyone who tries to break down into all these little digits and things like that, there's always adjustments being made, whether it's nonsense like daylight savings time, having to round off and add a day here, all that crap. That's not accurate. But the sky clock, the clock that is in the sky, the thing that man does not touch and cannot touch really, it is consistent. Day after day, night after night, maybe would be a better way of saying it. And it doesn't go anywhere. We know that whatever that shows, however many precessions, I know a lot of the Native Americans will say how many moons. They'll count the moons. Well, that's a pretty accurate way of doing it because that moon phase is always going to be consistent. So they know that if something happened 24 moons ago, they all know what that means. But if you try and do a comparison between the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar and you look at certain years, in reality, you couldn't put a thumbtack in an exact spot in history because the time's all jacked up. You don't know if 1610 is really 1610, which 1610? I don't know. If you had a time machine and had to program it like Marty McFly, you could end up somewhere else because that time is not consistent. But if old Doc Brown programmed the DeLorean to the moon cycles, let's say, he could calculate how many moons back or forward he wants to go, and he will get there accurately.
Yeah, but the way that we're programmed right now is to think that the Gregorian calendar is that, right? That's what we think.
But it's not.
No, right. So who was the Greek philosopher who said that you can't step into the same river twice? But that's the concept of time for us, is that time is like a river. That is, if we went back against the flow, we could arrive back in time. And so I think that that's what most of us think about the Gregorian calendar, is that it is linear. It is actual. You can program the DeLorean to go back to X, Y, and Z. Yeah. That's interesting. Let me ask you a question.
But it's off.
Right. Let me ask you a question, because it's actually up for debate right now on the Flat Earth debate. And we're in the new moon right now. And I shot the sunrise on Monday, I think, when the new moon was just going to start. There was just the waning crescent left. So I think Tuesday was the beginning of the new moon. And the new moon is up in the sky right now, but we can't see it. And so the question on the Flat Earth debate is an all points bulletin: where is Luna? Now, back in the spring, I was shooting the sky as well, and I used the Skyview app for my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And the Skyview app at new moon on that month put both sun and moon in tandem. That is, the moon was directly in front of the sun, according to my Skyview app. But guess what I didn't see? You got to guess?
You were counting you didn't see the moon, did you? Or you didn't see an eclipse?
Right, exactly. Now, if my Skyview app was accurate the day before and the week before when I was trying to locate stuff, then it's accurate right now. And the moon is in front of the sun? What? And I can't see an eclipse? What?
I think you're starting to see some validity, that there's a there to some of the things that Crow says, and that the moon has nothing to do with these questions. He says that. He proved it with the last one, if anyone wants to dig into that. So I think you may have just validated that for yourself without even realizing it.
Sure. But again, right now though, the moon is not in tandem with the sun. It's at an acute angle, but it was at an acute angle a couple of weeks ago and we could see a crescent. So for me, there are anomalies that don't mesh up with a heliocentric model.
That's what I call inconsistencies. I don't call myself a flat earther, but I respect the notion of challenging the mainstream because we see so many inconsistencies.
Right.
I think if flat earthers are listening, they know exactly what I mean. You could go on for hours with the amount of inconsistencies we find. And just remember, there's no lie in nature. So use that as your basis of trying to figure out what reality is.
Yeah. Now, what do you think in terms of, okay, so if there is no lie in nature and we're going to speculate on astronomical signs, how do you, Jason, how do you think we should go about coming down hard and fast on what we observe in the sky? And that is we're going to make a definitive, hard line where we're going to say this is what's happening. This is what's happening. Or this is what we...
You mean trying to figure out the actual scientific validity of what the luminaries are?
Right. Yeah. Or any phenomenon that we're going to look up and say, okay, this is happening. Why is this happening? Because what I think and I hear and I see as I look up articles and just kind of do some even nominal research, and I did it yesterday. I went to a random website. I think it was Britannica.com, and I looked up Eratosthenes. The guy with the sticks in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the very first thing, you want to know what it said?
What?
Eratosthenes assumed correctly XYZ. Right?
Right, so he used a certain point of view as a basis.
He made an assumption about what he was viewing and then drew conclusions on that. Now that assumption is hardline consensus mainstream science. But if you go back, he assumed what? So how do you keep yourself, Jason, safe from drawing those lines in the sand when you're simply looking up and you are just like, yeah, we can't know this?
That's kind of hard to say. I look at a lot of things, and I definitely don't take what mainstream research says as absolute fact right from the beginning. That's the first thing I can say. I don't know what the stars are. I've seen with my own eyes people do the focusing in thing and the measurement of light and how they don't look the way, for instance, photos NASA shows us from the Hubble and things like that. So I'm extremely open-minded about what the luminaries might really be. I've seen the tests done with the light from the moon being colder than the light from the sun and all those kinds of things. So I don't know exactly what it is, and I would like to do my own scientific research to figure it out. But right now, all I know is that those are part of the sky clock. That is the one consistency I do know, is that those things are there. They will be consistent from day to day.
Yeah, the other day when I was shooting the sunrise and the last of the waning crescent, Venus was in the sky, and I went through all of the apertures on my P900 taking shots, and there were some where you could see the crescent, and there were some where it wouldn't focus, and so you had a perfect circle, you know what I mean, so to speak, a circle, and it was as if you were looking through water at a pool light. Right. And it was really interesting to think about, okay, so why is this aperture showing a crescent on Venus? Why is this aperture not having that resolution? And I'm looking at what looks like maybe an emerald under the water. It was really, really interesting.
Yes, I've seen that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really interesting. All right. Were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say I don't know the answer to that yet, and I think that people doing their own homework is really the recommendation here. Yeah. Most definitely. All right, where am I at on my questions? Here we go. Okay, so if you could help a person begin to think correctly, how would you begin? Well, I'm not arrogant enough to say that I know what correct thinking is versus not correct thinking. It sounds very 1984 to me. But I know what you're getting at.
Let me go
you're
back.
Talking about terms.
Let me go back and say, okay, but your perspective on history, your perspective on the calendar, that's what I'm talking about in terms of you would think, Jason would think that your approach to history and the calendar and nature is how about this maybe, a healthier way to think? So if you were having a conversation with me and I was completely asleep, but we were friends, and you were thinking, Travis, he's not even asking the questions. He has no idea. That's what I'm talking about. How would you take steps toward waking me up?
It depends upon whether the person wants to have an open mind about things, because the problem is, it's like the allegory in the Matrix movie, that not only are these people totally bought into the system, but they will defend it with their lives. And do people want to defend the mainstream point of view as if it is absolutely, without a doubt, factual, even though they themselves didn't prove whatever the specific topic is we're discussing, they'll still accept it because that's what so-and-so said. The man in the white lab coat said it was this way, so it must be that way. When as soon as you start looking at a lot of things, you start realizing that it's not the way they said, that it's just backing up a traditional mainstream point of view. So it really depends upon the individual. How much do they want to be woken up, if you want to put it that way? So let's take 9/11 as a great example. By the laws of physics, if you want to go this way with it, the way the mainstream story goes with what happened that day, it doesn't work. I mean, the simple numerics don't work. Two planes don't take down 3 buildings. I mean, you can start just with that. But I have seen absolutely wonderful breakdowns of what it would take to do what happened, and it just wouldn't happen. I mean, that's just physics. I've seen mathematical models. There it is. Okay, so there's a there. There's evidence that basic mathematics proves that the mainstream story is a lie. Now, do I know exactly what happened there? And I've told people this. I've had these discussions. No, I don't know exactly what happened there, but 2 planes don't take down 3 buildings. That's one example you could use. Now, a lot of the stuff that we get into, especially on the show, are maybe what you could call higher concepts. It's going to be a lot more of a leap away from mainstream thinking than maybe a lot of people are ready to make. But the first one you got to accept is, for instance, money is a lie. It's a dead instrument. There's nothing to it. It's not backed by anything. The only reason it works is because people accept that it works. If tomorrow everyone said, this piece of paper is not worth anything other than the fact that it's a piece of paper, the entire system would break down immediately. But that's not going to happen. Everyone's got stake in this piece of paper. They believe, and belief is the enemy of knowing, that this thing has value, when in reality it doesn't.
All right, Jason, well, we've talked about some heavy-hitting stuff so far, but it's time to take it easy.
Take it easy, take it easy.
I'm just going to throw you some softball questions, and I want you to give me your immediate response. Are you ready?
Sure thing.
Okay. Red pill or blue pill?
Oh, I think I would always take the red pill. That's just the kind of person I am.
Straw man or living man?
I think those things have much deeper meanings than most people realize.
Which would you choose?
Oh, definitely living man.
Paul or Billy Shears?
Definitely Paul.
440 or 432?
Everything I do is in 432.
Vegan or normal person?
I would love to get myself to the point that I could be vegan, but right now I'm just a normal person.
Early bird or night owl?
A little bit of both. Depends upon the day.
Nature or big pharma?
Nature.
East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast.
Tesla or Einstein?
Tesla.
Trust your senses or trust consensus?
Definitely my senses.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, but I do like a nice cup of tea sometimes.
Cream or straight?
Cream.
Alchemy or masonry?
Alchemy.
Classic rock or classical?
Definitely classic rock.
All right, excellent. Thanks so much for taking it easy with us on this episode. We'll pick back up with our regularly scheduled program. I want you to give me something, Jason. I want you to give Red Hen Radio, I want you to give me what no one else has, and I want you to tell us something that no one knows about Jason Lindgren. Tell us something, Jason.
Oh, let me think. Okay. Let's try this.
You know the rules around here. This is a cliffhanger. You got to tune in next week to hear that juicy little tidbit from Jason Lindgren. All right, thanks so much for listening. I'm your host, Travis Finley, here at Red Hen Radio. Please make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell notification to keep up to date with whatever's happening here. And, so that's about it. Today's January 1st, 2019. This is episode number 3. Until next time.
Welcome to the show. If you don't know,
Didn't they teach you to reach for the stars while opening up the bars and keeping you chained down with mortgage bills and cars? Vaccines for your arms, kids sounding like supercharged, caffeinated hate-filled scars and rage-quit repertoires. No answers for yards, caught up in emotion that's not even yours. Imposter truths like impeccable retards, lined up for your serving of Gish Gallop and wars.